And what's driving this is the sense of having a superabundance of social connections and roles that really are a foundation of our humanity. We like to feel that we belong somewhere, whether in a tribe or with a home or with a group of people. Perhaps it's amongst people who actually share your common passions or your interests. That belonging actually is part of being an individual, but it's also part of a social humanity that we're all really responding to. There's also that need to be part of something a bit bigger than just you. This sense of giving back. And increasingly we're talking about having a sense of purpose. So individuals finding their purpose, finding out how they can contribute and give back to society. But also brands starting to increasingly talk about a sense of purpose. In many cases, I have to say, a lot of those brands are simply talking about the word without understanding the meaning. It's not fundamentally, deeply ingrained in what they do. But purpose and the cause of actually being part of something bigger is much more important. So this value is being created on reconnecting with people, with places, with experiences, and the growth and the search of that personal purpose is really reflecting that. And then fifthly, the luxury of experience. This is a sense of having a superabundance of memorable activities that create long-term emotional positivity, connection, and satisfaction. So what's driving this is the need for intangible and memorable activities or events that enrich a person's life. It's deeply sensed, it's emotional, there's a learning element within here. People are continually wanting to now improve their knowledge and to learn and grow. They're growing emotionally, they're growing intellectually, and this is a counterbalance to this ownership, which is really starting to become something which people are now railing against. How much stuff do you actually need to own? Versus usership, which is where we get rentals starting to happen, where we're starting to get fractional ownership of private jets, for example, because you don't want one all the time, it's going to sit in the hangar. So when you need it, it's there, but when you don't need it, somebody else can use it. So the idea of ownership really is being morphed into usership, which is much more a sustainable way of working. So the value is being placed on something which teaches an individual, that gives a different type of experience. And it provides new experiences that are more active than just buying of products. And for those of you who are paying attention at the beginning, I said there were 6 luxuries, okay? So you've only seen 5. Well, the 6th one actually is one of the more recent additions. This is a sense of having superabundance of safe spaces and personal security for yourself and your loved ones. It is the luxury of safety. This is a need to feel secure in your own environment. It's something that really came to the fore, of course, during the pandemic, when people felt threatened, physically, emotionally, psychologically threatened, that there was literally a life-limiting issue going on around them. And so this idea of safety and brands and spaces that allow them to feel safe and secure and protected actually became a luxury because it wasn't something that was available to everybody, sadly. It's a concern regarding uncertainty and the wider societal issues. And luxury of feeling safe in your own environment is something that we can all identify with. So value is really placed on something which provides this protection and gives a sense of personal safety. So those are the 6 fundamental luxuries going on. But of course, today I'm sure you're all sitting here thinking, yeah, what about Vuitton? What about the products and services? So I'm going to continue to really look for the rest of this, the detail around luxury brands, luxury products and services. I'll explain the reasons why not all luxury is the same. I'll take you through the 6 classic characteristics of a luxury brand, and then I'll provide you with some examples of how some luxury brands are reflecting some of these characteristics. And I'm sure you'll be able to come up with some of your own as well at the end. So a brand can be really viewed by consumers in comparison to other luxury brands. But if you were to ask a luxury brand manager, they would say that they compete with nobody. they have a story which is unique to that brand, and that actually, if you buy into that story, nobody else is going to have the same thing. So they don't have competitors, but there are alternatives, and if you can't hold their attention, if you don't actually earn that attention from the consumer, then the brand status can change. They can also change through mismanagement. So a few years ago, there was a whole problem for Burberry with the chav check that was going on. It was something where they had licensed out that print to everybody and anybody. They also had counterfeit that was going on, and it was just everywhere. And the vast majority of people who were seen wearing Burberry were not the sort of people that Burberry wanted to have seen in their garments. So the whole problem really had escalated because of poor licensing. And you can look at also other cases where you have this over-availability and exposure because the brand hasn't been managed very well. There are brands that have slipped into premium or even lower in some cases. So Calvin Klein is one particularly. If you look at Pierre Cardin, he was one of the premier brand designers, fashion, beautiful. And now you find them in the cheapest possible hotels as a set of in-room amenities, and they're always poor quality and they're always badly designed. So that brand has really been lost. When you look at BMW, it's no longer considered to be a luxury brand. It's premium at best, because it's essentially a basic car, and you can add on bits to it, but actually it's too easy to reach. Even Jaguar in the UK is starting to be questioned. Is it a luxury brand? They've gone into so many different forms, different price points, that it's become too accessible. And the problem then is when a high net worth consumer thinks that the brand they thought of as being luxury and right for them is suddenly being seen with people they don't identify with, they'll drop it. Absolutely like a stone, they'll be up for the next real luxury brand. So you have to be really careful as brand managers, either of your own brand or of those that you go and work with. And not all goods, or luxury goods and services, are of course equal. And they can be grouped according to 3 different types of characteristics. We've got the level of luxury, we have brand awareness, and also by brand volume in its own right. So firstly, if we look at it by level of luxury, the diagram on this page is showing how the different levels of luxury actually work, with some examples of brands, I would say, we can talk about in terms of those I would consider sitting within each of these. So if I look at the elite level, these are determined as the highest quality. They are the superb quality level. Quite a lot of them won't even be known. They are brands that you won't have heard of. They are elite, they're small. In many cases, they're only known by their customers and by the people that their customers tell. They don't advertise, you won't see them. They are micro businesses, but they are extremely high value. If you then look at the top level, you can have brands that really have established beyond doubt and have good management that they are leading luxury brands. So these would be things like Louis Vuitton, Armani, Chanel, Cartier, Dior, and so on. Mid-level are brands that are either just emerging or are remaining just behind the top level, either by the way that they're producing their goods or the volume of goods or actually just the character of the brand. So in here, things like Moschino, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, Escada, and Tiffany, I wouldn't consider to be any more than a mid-level brand. And I'm sure Gucci would hate to hear that, and Tiffany all know it. But at the end of the day, if you can access it very easily from the high street, it isn't going to be right at that elite or very top level. And then the entry level, of course, are the brands that are just above premium, just a bit better. They have still got some cachet amongst them, but they are starting to get into more volume availability. So things like Coach, Michael Kors, Mercedes, Hugo Boss, they would really be as an entry level in the luxury pyramid that I show you here. And the positioning that you decide to adopt within this pyramid really is going to have an impact on what you do and how you do it and what you're selling at the end of the day from that brand. The next one is looking at it by brand awareness. Now, An overly simplistic approach when you're looking at comparing luxury brands or positioning them within this is simply to assess them by brand awareness. As I just said, elite brands will hardly be known by you. Luxury brands are in a really unusual situation in that they need to be known enough to be able to generate commercial revenues. But if you make it too available or you make them too well known, they become something which isn't really aspirational for the true high net worth consumer. So you have to be careful that it remains rare and special. A good example of this is the Patek Philippe watch. It is known as being at the high end. It's expensive, but it's all about the next generation, and that is the emotional pull that that particular brand is applying. It's got good brand awareness, but it's certainly not affordable for the vast majority of consumers that might like it. And it's ensuring, therefore, that the brand remains aspirational and still relevant to the high net worth consumer that's buying it. If we then look at the next one, which is finally looking at the volume of business, this is one of the most controversial definitions. Okay, so the next one. Luxury has always been the prerogative of a few wealthy individuals. You've seen from the history that that has actually been the case for millennia. So the higher the volume of goods available, the lower the perceived rarity and therefore the lower level of luxury. It's quite an easy way to make a comparison. The small-scale, micro-elite brands, as I say, you won't even know. The small-scale brands are less easy to define, and the value is really questionable when you're trying to compare that type of brand. These will be the ones that do single batch distillations of gins. There's that lovely gin brand called Gin Gin down in Goa. Really interesting. They've come up with an innovative way of creating single batch gins. And it tastes amazing, it looks fabulous, and they've got sustainability running all the way through that particular brand. So under this particular definition, you can imagine that the big players and the giant players, the mega houses, the LVMH, the Kerings, and so on, maybe, shall we whisper it so they don't get too upset, but are they luxury anymore? Or are they just fast fashion that's more expensive? Who knows? If you can buy something, the same thing in Mumbai as in London, New York, and Shanghai, and I've seen them all in these places, then actually, is it truly rare? Or is it just something which they're controlling a distribution of? And therefore, that's where their exclusivity comes from. It's no longer only the prerogative of wealthy individuals. If you want to put something on your credit card, you can buy it. So, let me ask you, what's luxury? What do you think luxury actually is? Next. Ginger. And what do you think of when deciding whether something is luxury or not? Any ideas? What do you think is luxury? Now, don't all shout at once. I won't buy it. And there are no right or wrong answers. What's luxury? Yeah?
Luxury is a unique experience that is curated just for you.
A unique experience created just for you. Great answer. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I think
yes. Okay.
Luxury is something when someone you can't afford to have it. For example, luxury is certainly said that someone doesn't have the luxury of that extra time to pay the responsibility.
Yes. So luxury is understood by the fact that you can't always have it. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good answer. Yeah.
Kind of privilege that sets you apart from others.
Yeah. Definitely sets you apart in whether it's because it's so expensive that you can't afford it, or whether actually it has such an extraordinary look to it. It actually is setting you apart from anyone else. Any other answers? Yeah?
I feel heritage is also luxury. So
Yes.
when you were mentioning that there are 6 luxuries: time, individuality, experience, belonging, authenticity, and safety,
Yeah.
I felt like all the brand values which you have been talking about, they develop over time, and I think heritage is a very inclusive part of luxury.
Very much so. In fact, if you were to look at one of the most important elements within luxury, it's the storytelling. And that's because luxury is bought as an emotion, not a functional purchase. You have to tap into that emotion. You have to tell a story that is the best way of getting into that emotion. And that's really because if I wanted to buy a $1,000 shirt, well, it's got to be doing more than just covering my back, because I could go down to any place and go and find that. So it's got to be able to deliver more than that. But it's how that's making you feel, and actually the definition of luxury is really changing quite significantly. So yes, what is luxury? So there are basically these 6 characteristics which are recognized as being luxury. Now I would say I'm going to keep talking about old luxury, and then we're going to talk about new luxury, because it's evolving, it's really changing. These 6 characteristics have really been the basis of what a luxury brand is meant to embody and how you can identify it as well. So the first one is looking at price. We were talking about the fact that it's very, very expensive, that actually when we're looking at the products themselves, generally they're going to be above average, aren't they? Pretty expensive, a few lakh for a pair of shoes or whatever it might be. So those are the sort of indulgences. However, with the way that luxury is evolving and changing, price is no longer a guarantee. You can't say that just because something's over a certain price, you know, $2,000, $3,000 or so on, that it's got to be luxury. Because there are new luxuries that are coming through that just don't conform to that. So don't only look at that price. And in fact, it has been said that price is the least important factor in luxury, because, as somebody said, when you fall in love, price is not the thing you ask. And so this is the thing, create the love with the consumer, and the price is irrelevant. They will have it no matter what it is. So the second one of these is the idea of quality. Now, quality is always something which is, you know, an important factor in luxury. You can't have a shoddy luxury goods. You just can't. Attention to detail, the fact that threads cannot be hanging off it, the fact that when you have a side seam, the pattern lines up perfectly, the fact that the hem is not dipping unless that's part of a design, the fact that the buttonhole is not undone. All of these sort of things are a quality factor. When I look at something like, you know, a performance car, for example, a high-performance supercar, it's not the fact that it can go fast, because that's a functional thing. That isn't the element that is being bought. It'll be lovely, you know, we'll talk a bit about the Mclaren F1 in a moment, but actually a supercar is not about being able to get 4 wheels and a chassis going forward. In fact, they are the least practical. You put a low-level supercar over a speed bump, it gets stuck. It actually rocks. It's not great. You can't even fit golf clubs in the back, believe me, I've tried. It just doesn't work from a practical point of view, but it's not that practical. Not at all. It's about the emotion. How does it make you feel? You feel you are driving the best car that there is, that it has that quality feel, that the paintwork is superb. Everything about it has got to be amazing. Quality is a massive part as a characteristic of luxury. The third one on here is aesthetics. So the design, how beautiful actually is it? And, you know, on their own, crafts are not luxury. You only have to take a little walk down Calabar Causeway or go to Jampathy Market or Dilly Hart. You see an abundance of crafts there, but are they luxury? No. No, they're really not. What they are is the start point. They're the raw material, if you like, of where luxury can evolve to. The transformation of the craft into luxury comes down to you guys in design. It's how do you make it something that is fabulous. You come to a university because you have the raw talent. That is what somebody who is creating the crafts has got, raw talent. But unless it's shaped and given direction and given an exposure with fabulous forms and design ideas, it just remains craft. And craft is not luxury. So the talent and the vision of a designer in delivering the aesthetics of quality is what brings craft to life. That's what makes it into luxury. So on the next slide, we're going to have a look at the other three parts of this. So that of rarity. Well, I mentioned it earlier in terms of business volume. If you have high volumes, can it really be truly rare? But there are some areas where more rare materials are being used, whether that is recycled precious metals from electronics. There was a company that I've been involved with previously, the Royal Mint. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. It's a very obscure business in the UK, but it's actually 1100 years old, and it's probably made most of the coins that you have in India as well as around the world. It's the coin maker for the Queen. It was started back in 886, and it is evolving. And the reason it's having to evolve and become more of a luxury brand is because people just aren't using coins anymore. How many of us have a bag full of coins? It drives me crazy, but actually we're living on plastic. And so any business which is all about making coins is not going to survive very long. And so I was part of a project team over there that looked at how we could recover precious metals, including gold, from electronics. And you can get quite a lot of gold out of a few laptops and a mobile phone. And that stops you then having to dig that gold out of the ground. It gives it a different story, but it's also got that sustainability ethic, which is important. Come over this side if you want to. Get it from, the sourcing of it particularly. So high altitude first flush teas, single sources, animal skins. The higher the value that's being placed on it, it's difficult to get to, or it's very unusual to get. However, some of these rarities are really going out of fashion. Animal fur is pretty much banned now in most of the luxury houses, thank goodness. The rare and unusual skins like snake, crocodile, and so on are becoming less popular. And so we're seeing that rarity of those materials starting to wane. It's not an appeal now, that rarity. It's something which is actually not appealing at all. So what happens when the recycled gold hits the market? What happens when lab-grown diamonds are actually part of a luxury environment? The fifth characteristic, extraordinariness, is one of the most difficult to define because it's actually an emotional response from an individual. It's something that when you see it, it makes you go, wow, that's fantastic. It is a combination of the materials, the aesthetic, the skill, the craft involved in it, and the sheer imagination that has been brought to bear. And I'll give you an example in a moment of something which is truly extraordinary. And finally, symbolism. Well, this is basically an achievement of social status as a result of using, wearing, or owning an item of luxury. It could be using a luxury service or venue as well, so going somewhere where they really don't let more than 3 or 4 people in, or it's only ever for private parties. Richard Branson, who I used to work with, he owns Necker Island, and Necker Island has a very small accommodation. You can hire the whole island, including the staff and all the facilities, and it costs a fortune, but they have a waiting list. And if you look at the Virgin Holiday, just generally their exclusive collection, they're in the most extraordinary places. You know, Ula Saba and South Africa, it's quite amazing. I have literally sat in a copper bath watching elephants in front of me. It's that sort of experience, it's that luxuriousness which actually typifies those types of holidays. So let's have a look at a few examples of each of these. So just take one per type. So next one please. So Mclaren cars. So on the Mclaren cars, one of the ones, can you click on me? This is the Mclaren, if you don't know it, 1998 Mclaren F1 SN. just in case you weren't sure about which one. This was the pinnacle of engineering in cars. It had every element to it. It was a forerunner of everything a supercar is. Sure, by today's standards, it's not the fastest, but it had all these fabulous details, the elements behind it, and it was truly something that was exceptional. Now, this is a car that you could probably pay about $13 million for. The Sultan of Brunei has 8, and there are various others that have been written off by heavy-footed, unknowing owners who crashed them. This isn't an easy car to drive, but it's something that you want to own, and you probably not get many miles on it because it'll sit in the garage and just be admired. It's a piece of art, it's a thing of beauty. It's something, again, with that superabundance of wealth, you have that privilege of being able to just look at a car that cost you $13 million. It's the best car that there ever was. When we look at quality, I would say that there is undeniable quality in Chanel Couture. So it's the close attention to the detail, the alignment of the patterns, as I mentioned. Its design is also classic and simple in shape, but they're using familiar patterns to update it. So this idea of the houndstooth check comes from Chanel history, but it's given this fresh twist by having the chartreuse kind of finish to it. And it also has classic block colours with their iconic contrast trim. So you know what a Chanel item looks like, but the attention to detail is absolutely superb. And it comes with a price. It's not just the retail price either, but the expectation of the consumer. I was once told a story about a Chanel consumer, just as an allegorical tale, if you like, rather than actually the same consumer going to the newspaper. They would have to have a problem if they did this. So a Chanel consumer went into the London store and bought a beautiful suit. And she got it home, and she noticed there was a little thread just on the top, very unusual. They wouldn't normally expect to see this, but she went and got some small scissors and just pulled it and snipped it. Nothing of it. Fine. A consumer of Chanel went into a New York shop and bought the same suit, had this little thread that was hanging off the arm, and so at the end of the day she thought, that's not acceptable. So she took it back to the shop and said, remove this thread. She didn't get her own scissors out. She took it back to make a point that this isn't what I would expect. But, they removed it, very sorry, went on her way, very happy. A Chanel customer in Tokyo went to buy her suit, same little thread hanging off the shoulder. Got it home, was disgusted, absolutely awful. Took it back, threw the suit back to the shop assistant and said, take it back, I demand an apology and my money back, I'm never buying here again. There are different levels of expectation and different quality levels that go around the world, different cultures. And so when you are looking at luxury brands as your own or as an employee, actually you need to understand where you're selling and that cultural difference that really does matter. So just remember your Chanel suit with a little thread off the top. Cartier, aesthetics. I mean, who wouldn't think that this is a beautiful piece? Cartier's got this really long association with India, as we know. This piece is just no exception to it. And it demonstrates the real meaning of aesthetics in luxury. This Bouteille du Monde high jewellery collection by Cartier showcases brilliant stones and an overall theme which is highlighting the beauty of the world. This Panthère Heroique necklace features one of Cartier's signature design elements, crafted in white gold, diamonds and onyx, and wrapped around about 28-carat fancy-shaped emeralds. The tassel of emerald beads, meanwhile, can be removed to wear the necklace alone, or to be attached to the clasp so it drapes down the back. How beautiful is that? This is art in 3D. It's a powerful concept that's been imagined as high jewellery. It's designed to make a statement, and it's also to showcase the creator's skills. So I think I'd quite like to have that, but I'm not sure where I'd wear it. So perhaps suggestions later. This is a brand that you won't have heard of, I'm quite sure, TWG. And TWG yellow gold T-bud tea is a great example of a super luxury product that's actually from a brand that offers a wide variety of tea products, all of which are tending to be quite premium priced compared to what a normal tea like that would be, but not of them are very expensive per se. So the yellow gold tea buds, just to get your appetite going here, are considered one of the most luxurious and rare teas in the world. The yellow gold tea buds are harvested only once a year using golden shears, and then they're sun-dried. The tea leaves are then sprayed with edible 24-karat gold flakes, and it's known as the tea of the Emperors of China. And if you wanted to buy some, just in case, you haven't got enough student debt, 6.6 lakh per kilo, you can have a nice cup of tea. And you get the metallic floral taste to it. It's currently only sold in Singapore by the TWG company. Symbolism. There's absolutely no doubt that in his society, the most desirable wedding ensemble is from Sabyasachi Mukherjee. It's known. He has carefully curated this superb collection of clients, celebrities, and so on, who have high status, which really deliver this halo effect for the rest of the collection that are bought by the more normal mortals of the world. Whenever there is a Bollywood star getting married, he's the go-to brand, but they also don't pay. He will do it for free because the impact on his brand is so significant that it's worth the investment. He's also taken care of his backstory, so the work with the Caragars and how he's held those and protected those is really important. And his brand icon and his style are so recognizable that this is an example of a really great Indian luxury brand. At every level, it's delivering the luxury experience. And he's also managed to develop this feeling of exclusivity. You'll not find his store in any malls. He insists on having standalone stores because then he can control the experience, the access, everybody who can get there, he knows who's in his store. So actually that whole idea of exclusivity is something which he has very carefully been curated as well. So an amazing example of symbolism. And I mentioned just earlier about extraordinariness, and I'm going to put this one up for the vote. Okay, these are a pair of earrings by very talented, quite a new designer, David Yurman. The use of beetles, not the singing type, but this sort of insect type, is very well known in luxury. It's a classic motif. This one happens to be called the jewel beetle, very, very appropriately. But what he's done here is the delivery of how that beetle looks is really quite extraordinary. It's set then amongst high quality, numerous, very beautifully cut diamonds that are within a frond design to emulate the leaf that the beetle would be sitting on and give an almost a 2D, 3D feel to it. It's an extraordinary piece of art. It's something, again, which would be noticed, it would make an impact, and it's designed to do that. So you may find that a lot of actresses probably won't buy this, but they'll always be borrowing it because the impact of it is so significant. So what do you think? Is that extraordinary? Is it extraordinary? No? No? We have different versions of extraordinary. That's fine. You have yours, I have mine. But, as I said before, luxury is really changing quite significantly. The future is not really where the past has been. And actually, luxury as a market, as a sector, as an activity, has been constantly evolving. It never really stops. And so it would be odd if luxury was just stuck in its own time warp. It's evolving in its definition and in the scope of products as well, which are considered to be luxury. And the use of innovation and a new sense of time and context is something which is adding the value to new luxury brands. So the change, though, is being driven more by the consumer than the brand themselves. And a lot of established luxury brands are having to run to catch up with where their consumer is. So this is why you see the greenwashing coming through from the luxury brands, because they think that's what their consumer wants to hear. Whereas actually what the consumer's looking for is a more fundamental evolution of how luxury is produced and what it's made from. So the luxury shift which is what I'm seeing right now, is really down to how value is being created for the luxury consumer themselves. And in luxury, value has nothing to do with the price. It is what you bring over and above any other brand or product in the market. There's a general shift in usage and understanding of this term luxury as well. It's something that we've seen happening, as I've said, over the centuries. But luxury is really moving now from this elitist or elitism phone to something which is more about extravagant indulgence. It's getting back to that superabundance. It's something which is excess. It's something which is superb in the way that it is being created, no matter what that actually is. It's the basis of the symbolism, which is characteristic, as I showed you in the 6 characteristics. But luxury is now more inner directed. It's not just about the outer status. And you'll understand if you look back at those 6 luxuries why extravagant indulgences for yourself are really becoming a new definition of luxury itself. So we're going to have a look at a few images, and I want you to tell me which one you think is luxury. Let's see how we do it. So first of all, let's look at this one. So, would you say this is luxury? No? Some do, some don't? Who says no? Who says no? Doesn't mean you're wrong. Yeah?
They become very common things.
It's commonplace, it's accessible.
Yeah.
What Chanel have done is to take that haute couture idea and now they've cascaded it into the more accessible premium or entry point.
Yeah.
And it's a deliberate, strategic move for them because they feel like once they've captured you within the Chanel world, if you like, you want to continue to escalate and move further into it. So maybe that's not a luxury. What about this? This is a wooden-handled Shinola type watch. Is that a luxury or is that not a luxury? Is it? Watch this. Come on, people over here. I'm going to wake you up. So, is that a luxury? Okay, tell me, is that a luxury? Okay, because it's made with the wooden handle and it's got something different about it. Okay. And what would make it more luxury? So something which is a bit more typical. Maybe the person that's seen using it. So if it was on Vera Cooley's arm, for example, it might be considered a bit more aspirational. So yeah, okay. Yeah, love the hat. Yes, exactly. It's almost being shared by word of mouth at the moment. And yet Shinola as a watch brand in the US is fabulous. And if you go and look at their story online, they're based in Chicago, they do a lot for the community, they're out of the Detroit works around there, so they actually are about engineering. That's part of their story. In fact, they do a nice line of Mickey Mouse watches, just so you know. Is this luxury? Yes? Okay, why is that luxury? Your own time. Let's get back to that luxury of time, that indulgence. It's about you. You can imagine yourself enjoying being in there. And this looks like it's made in very high spec, it's beautiful materials, everything around it feels very considered, very luxurious. What about this? Is this luxury?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Who said yes? Okay, yeah, why is it?
I think because it's rare at this point.
Because it's rare.
It's rare
Yeah.
and it's comforting. It's a pleasant experience. So
Yeah. A bit more going back to that sort of nature, being by yourself, but part of something bigger.
it's something we don't experience often, especially living in a city. I think
That's
our
a good
lives are
point.
very fast-paced, so just going back and
Yeah.
slowing down.
And with the increasing urbanisation, I think that's going to be much more of a rarity as we go forward.
I personally feel like her expression and she looks so much at ease.
Yes.
Whereas right now, majority of the people don't have that kind of time to spare.
Yeah.
Even though like there may be a garden all around you, everybody's busy in the rat race of life, and everyone's trying to achieve that luxury, but they can't make time for themselves. And I feel if you can afford to give yourself that kind of time and sit peacefully and just relax, I feel that's the biggest luxury.
The luxury of time. You know, we don't have enough of it. And we can guarantee there are only 24 hours in a day. I haven't yet managed to extend it, I've tried. But that luxury of time is really important. So that feeling of calm, the time to be calm rather than stressed and constantly moving. Let's do the last one on this slide. So over here, these earbuds, are they luxury or not? No, a resounding no. Hallelujah, yes, because whilst they're not necessary to life, they're very commonplace. And so anybody can get them, and you get copies of them, and it just doesn't have that feeling of being special. Right, next one. So, some more to have a look at. So, is this luxury? Yes? Right, who said yes? Hand up. Yeah, come on. So why is it luxury?
I think because not a lot of people have access to, like, getting to go on ships to the sea and that. Nobody has like access to such an experience.
Exactly. So which luxury do you think this really is reflecting? Luxury of time, luxury of experience, luxury of knowledge?
I think experience.
Yeah. Okay. Because you can imagine that would be something. I'm not necessarily going to own a yacht, you never know one day, but actually the experience is something that you can imagine and that's aspirational. Is this luxury or not? No. I can't decide, huh? Okay. So who said yes, it's luxury? Somebody definitely did. So much, yes. Why do you think it's luxury?
I think it's unusual to see the lipstick kind of carved out. It's the appearance, right?
Yes.
The color is rich.
It's the attention to detail that helps. It's an entry level like the Chanel fragrance. It's something that Burberry have created. It's got their iconic patterning in here as well. So actually they are reflecting the core brand, but at the end of the day, it could be bought by anybody, but it's about stepping them into that next level, and with Burberry and so on. And what about this? Is this luxury? Is it luxury? Who says yes? Anybody? Yes, good.
So a lot of people spend a lot of money
Yeah.
on food.
Yeah.
But then, as we discussed, that even in food, there's a lot of rich, exotic flavor.
Yeah.
So a higher end food, like this cake was like a normal cake would be $500, but this cake would be $1,000. So like even flavors and taste,
And the visual of it is also elevated because these are gold-topped macarons. Everything feels like it's indulgent. There's an excess even of the covering because it's running off the edge. So when you think about luxury changing its definition to being more extravagant indulgence, that's definitely an extravagant indulgence. When you're looking at pricing, remember what I... Okay, so, a Bellini. Is this a luxury, or is it just something we're dying for on a Friday afternoon? With her. Yeah, what would you say? Yeah.
I think all of this, I think luxury in itself is very subjective. Something that I have access to, somebody else might not have access to. And if something is luxury to me or something is easily available to me, it won't be the same for somebody else.
Exactly.
So it's very perspective based and it's very subjective.
It is.
My price point might be different from somebody else's price point.
Exactly. And wherever you are in the world, it will change as well.
Exactly.
You're quite right, and if I had a luxury gold star, I'd give it to you, because that's absolutely what it's about. Luxury is subjective. Nobody can tell you that something is or is not luxury. It's how you feel about it, how it makes you emotionally respond. So would you consider a set of gold playing cards and dice to be luxury? It's an extravagance. It's something you don't need. But yeah, if I wanted it, I could imagine that going down quite nicely in certain circles where status is by bling and having something which is really quite extraordinary. So that could be, again, the same idea here. It feels like you've got time, it feels like you've got the experience. So when you're looking at luxury, go back to those 6 ideas of luxury, because you'll find that brands are starting to echo those increasingly. It's not just about status, it's about how it makes you respond, and that means the brand has to do things differently. And so if I was to say, which one of these do you think is truly luxury? So you have somebody who's handcrafting, hand printing a piece of fabric here to make into something beautiful, no doubt. A Gucci trainer or a lab-grown diamond. Who would say that the handcrafted piece is truly luxury? Hands up. Yeah? A few of you? Yeah, good. Who would say that the Gucci trainer is a luxury? Yes! Who would say that the lab-grown diamonds are potentially a luxury? They're different. Yeah. And in fact, I'm talking with a jeweler at the moment who has had an enormous career, and his family business has always been in natural diamonds. And we're talking about how we evolve him into actually taking lab-grown diamonds, because you can have different colours of lab-grown diamonds. It is something which appeals to a Gen Z millennial consumer, and he'll be the first, probably, certainly in Asia, if not in Europe as well, to have a focus on lab-grown diamonds. So these are amazing moves forward, and are being railed against by some of the more conventional luxury brands, because what's Cartier going to do with this? What's De Beers going to do? They're going to stop pulling diamonds out of rocks. That's their business model. So actually there's a fundamental existential threat to some of these brands that have been around for centuries, because what is defined as being luxury is now not going to be there. Okay, thank you for your input there. And we're changing the definition of luxury, because the old luxury has very much been this binary between the product and the experience. But now new luxury is really looking at layering in that personal subjectivity, how it makes me feel, how it actually makes me respond emotionally. And so it's a much more nuanced idea of where luxury is going to be in the future. And so when you start to think of the consumer now as a learner, as a collaborator, as a collector, you actually start to think about this in quite a different way. Because old luxury was about the brand imposing on the consumer. Now the consumer is actually imposing more on the brand. It's a very different relationship. So the factors that are creating value for luxury consumers, we've got these 5 in here. So niche targeting, exclusivity, the brand promise, the status symbol still comes back in here, and then this strong differentiation. These are the 5 value creators particularly. And the value of luxury is being challenged. It's fundamentally changing the way that consumers talk about it and desire and approach luxury as a whole. So if we look at each of those in turn, targeting a niche, the first one, is actually an essential in luxury. Unlike mass or even premium brands, you have to target carefully the person that you want to attract by all those different characteristics that I've mentioned to you. It's got to be a large enough niche that's actually going to make this commercial, but not so large that it becomes so available it can't be luxury. So it's a fine balance. So the sort of questions that you need to ask will be, can the consumers in this niche afford what I will be selling? Are they going to be able to buy that Cartier necklace, or actually that's not who you're targeting? Is it a niche that attracts affluent customers? Is it a niche that's going to be still relevant given the future consumer trends and the shift towards a more sustainable need? Do I have the product that's going to appeal to this niche? Am I good enough? Am I able to actually produce the quality that's needed? And you shouldn't make the mistake of locking yourself in too tightly to a niche, which isn't going to allow you to grow anywhere. You need to be able to think about your 5 and 10-year plans when you're looking at developing new brands. So whilst it can be really difficult to understand the affluent consumers and their lifestyles, because we've probably never been part of it, you have to get to know them very well. You have to know that there are other ways also that consumers of luxury are starting to be part of this. One of the biggest threats that the luxury brands have faced recently has been on the rise of rental and resale. Absolutely hated it. They banned it, they wanted to say it wasn't real, that it was all fake that was being driven through it. But as they've seen it growing, some of them are now buying into it. Some of them are actually taking shares in these things, Vestiaire Collective and so on. Because now they feel that if they can just control it and be the, if you like, the arbiters of the quality, and so their brand is not being damaged in some way, actually this is a way of them fulfilling some of their sustainability needs. And when you're looking at the resale level, actually what they were fearful of was that their current customer would go and buy resale. It's never going to happen. If that Chanel customer who didn't like the thread coming out of her shoulder is going to buy resale, I would eat your hat. Because there's absolutely no chance. It's a different experience, there's a different need to it. So what they've done is to actually increase the size of their customer base. And that's something that they need to be building out from. What we're moving from, though, is old luxury, which was... I'm sorry. We're moving from old luxury, where the consumer is led by the brand's dictating who it wants to target, versus the brand being led by the consumer, who decides whether it's a niche that they are part of and they want to be part of with that brand. It's not just about old luxury, which is about a certain lifestyle, but it's now about a new luxury passion. It's something which is a bit different. The brand's the master in old luxury, whereas the consumer is asking them to be the guide and the expert as well. So that's niche targeting. If we look at the second one, which is exclusivity.
Excuse me. And what was written the last line?
The last line, brand is the guide and the expert. Because if you're talking about a niche, you're talking about people who have a shared passion. So for example, if I use the Royal Mint back as a coin, big part of their business is actually coin collectors. And they have little collecting groups on WhatsApp and Facebook, and they all talk to each other, and the brand comes in and gives them information. The museum manager will take part in online discussions. So they're embedding the need of that passion and knowledge into actually the niche that they've been targeting. So we go to the next one, which is around exclusivity. Exclusivity has been the way that brands have created this feeling of rarity, whilst they've been growing the volumes that they're prepared to offer. In order to push the market desire for your brands, you've got to be able to deliver on this exclusivity. But quite often, exclusivity is something that it's misunderstood. High net worth individuals are hugely competitive. They don't get where they are by not being competitive, by not wanting to be the best, to have the first, the only, whatever it might be. So if they see too many other people with that same product, it's no longer exclusive, they won't buy it any longer. So previously, in old luxury, the brand's been deciding exclusivity in its delivery. So that's generally been a distribution model. How do we restrict the distribution, either into our own stores, into agreed concessions within department stores? So that's the only way that they made this exclusive. But what's happening now is that new luxury is becoming a micro producer. They're not producing the high volumes. The rarity and the exclusivity is because they're only making 10 or 100 or 500 of something, not thousands of items. And that's, again, a more sustainable model. The brand in this old luxury way is the supplier, whereas actually the brand is the creator and curator in new luxury. It's how do you put that forward to the consumer. Okay. That's it, brand promise. The brand promise is what you honestly say, and it's an unstated thing, but it's felt by the consumer. What are you going to deliver to them? How is it luxury? How are they going to feel and understand this to be luxury? The brand previously in old luxury has been defining its promise. So we're going to make this beautiful and you're going to like it, kind of thing. But actually now the consumer is defining what's expected. What do they need that brand to promise to them in order to give them the sale? What's that business opportunity for them? Previously, the brand promise has been all about consistency, perfection in its way. So Chanel, back to the Chanel example, that fragrance that I showed you is in a box which is only produced by a very, very few producers around the world because they have already decided on the box material. The colour is very, very carefully maintained, so there is no difference anywhere in the delivery of that brand in a fragrance. Absolutely identical. Whereas actually, the brand promise of a new luxury is it's personal. There will be things which are slightly different. In fact, one of the signatures of luxury used to literally be a signature. It used to be a little trait or a thread or something which had been sewn into a garment or an item that was carved into a leather piece that said, this is who made it, I'm putting my mark on it. That's where this brand idea came from. But it was actually something which made it very personal. So the brand previously has been defining the promise, but now the brand has to be the enabler of this promise because it is something that the consumer is needing from them. And if they don't enable it, then they will actually walk away. The symbolic nature, of course, in luxury is absolutely known. So brands have achieved status by association with influencers. They were doing influencer marketing before it was even called that, by having the right king or queen or the right celebrity or the right actor actually wearing or using their products. It's how Vuitton and Gucci actually understood the value of what they were doing right back when they were basically doormen on a hotel door. Now the consumer is deciding what is a status symbol. It's about inner, it's about what makes me feel better and my status to myself. And it's about those who are in the know also conferring that status across each other. It's going from being just about valuable to being valued. It's about the brand being the symbol in old luxury to actually the brand is the deliverer of the product. And so it actually is giving you the status of something which is superb. And that's why you like it. You're appreciating that product in its own right. And then the last one here is the differentiation. So we know, we've said that luxury brands don't think that they compete, but you've got to still stand out. You've got to do something different. And so being able to stand out from the crowd is really, really important. When a brand looks like something and only carries on doing what it's done before, it becomes very stale, even in luxury, and people are now starting to look beyond that. They want something new. And that's why if we come back to the theme I started with today with Indian luxury, there's a global consumer here that's bored. Really, really bored, because luxury brands that you see from the West are so homogenous. It's just dull, because there's nothing which is culturally relevant to them. It's just a badge, it's just got that status by association. What they're looking for are these discovery brands. They're looking for luxury to come out of other centres that has got something different to say. And that's something where the Indian luxury market has got huge potential to internationalise. If you can think of it, and I was walking through Mumbai airport yesterday, Indian at heart, but global in spirit. Absolutely love that line, because that's absolutely what luxury needs to be. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, India can actually take that culture and that interest and that design idea overseas too. Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah. So this is the new luxury checklist. I said to you before that there were 6 characteristics. Well, actually now modern luxury, new luxury is more defined by 10. And some of those are similar to the old characteristics. Some of them are really building on the new time and context that luxury is finding itself in. It's about making luxury more relevant. It's about reflecting the changing consumer priorities. It's also about focusing on that storytelling skill and having something interesting to say. But the celebration of skills as well, something which isn't machine-made, but something which has got handcrafting to it, has that slowness of production, and that's where the value is coming from. So the 10 characteristics are superior performance. So it's about being the top of the class, the best in its field. It must deliver something meaningful, but a measurable, better performance than anything else. But it isn't the only reason why someone's going to buy a luxury product. Think back to the supercar. Superior craftsmanship, on the other hand, cannot be downplayed. That's something where it's an extraordinariness that actually has got the highest quality of craftsmanship as part of it. The connection is very intimate, very personal, because things are made by hand. Innovation. Luxury brands connect with customers by presenting new visions and new ideas. It's all in keeping with the core values of the brand. Exclusivity is still within there, but luxury brands connecting with the customers, not by defining and limiting where they're buying the products, but actually by making the customer themselves feel very special, very unique, and that the brand is exclusive around them. So it's actually having that connection back to the luxury of individuality. The sense of time and place is very important, so it can be both contemporary, but it can't be so fashion-led that it is going to be dated. So it has this lovely timelessness, but it never feels really dated. If you think about the Chanel suit example, it feels timeless, but it's constantly updated by other elements from it. The sophistication and aesthetic style is another characteristic. They need to connect with customers' appreciation of artistic creativity. They need to be relevant. They connect by being relevant to the customers' lives and lifestyles. This was never something that a luxury brand of old luxury would have considered. The heritage we were talking about earlier, in terms of connecting through stories of their lineage and of their expertise. And responsibility, that was never something that had been considered by old luxury. It wasn't in their lexicon at all. But now customers are expecting their luxury brands to have a more responsible attitude. So what is the future for luxury? So if I gaze into my crystal ball, which will be a beautiful crystal ball, of course, I think we can see both a bright and a dark future. There's one road that leads to long-term success as a brand, and the other side leads to oblivion. Quite frankly, when we look at the work that's been going recently, luxury is not about even more collaborations. It really isn't. That has now been so done that collaborations have come down to the mass market level. That was a very fast transfer, and most of the collaborations we saw were quite dull and brought nothing of any interest to the consumer. They were just commercial. And so that is not what luxury is all about. Luxury is also not about just having PR-driven sustainability stories. It is about doing something more than that. So luxury is about sustainability and innovation, and it is about having more immersive consumer experiences. So I'm just going to finish on these last 2 points. To my mind, the only future for luxury is sustainability. Without it, it doesn't have a new customer coming through. It will literally die because there won't be consumers in the future there. And you have to look at the sustainability challenge with the lens of the 3 different characteristics: environmental, social, and economic. It's not just a PR exercise, but a fundamental re-evaluation of what's made, how much, and the materials and the resources that are used. Past excuses of luxury brands, for example, were, well, we can't use the new materials because it won't look so good. Or we can't use these luxury materials because our designers don't know how to work with them. It's rubbish. You learn how to adapt and you learn how to use new materials all the time. So they've now realised that they have to do something about it, that greenwashing at the moment has been their response. Innovation's always been at the heart of luxury, you know, from the iconic T-lock and clasp on the trench coat from Burberry, which was patented in 1912, to the use of reclaimed precious metals, such as those that we used at the Tokyo Olympics for the medals that were given in the ceremonies. Luxury's got a responsibility, actually, to support innovation and to showcase these key collections. This is going to have a cascade effect then down to the premium and the mass levels, which is where the volume impact really is going to come through. So if they're using new materials, they're showing how it can be used, they're showing how the most high class, the gold standard of using that material is going to be, and that will come through down into the prestige and premium and mass. And then the second of those that I said was about immersive experiences. So during the pandemic, the consumers really gone through their own revolution. And it's a revolution in how they buy, where they buy, and how they want to be entertained with much more new and immersive online experiences. Online gaming actually rapidly accelerated during the lockdown, whilst luxury brands had to find ways to connect with their customers in non-physical ways. So you've got this sort of rising storm, if you like, of online and non-physical that's being pushed into luxury. This is a number of new initiatives that are being trialled. So, for example, Gucci back in 2018, they probably are one of the most innovative of the brands, used their Gucci Hallucination Spring-Summer campaigns, which basically imagined paintings that you could step into. And they had in-store experiences with AI and AR that actually helped you to feel like you were part of classic paintings. So very, very different. One of the more interesting collaborations is the one that you see here between Dior and Gran Turismo 7. That's just coming out right now. They have designed a series of skins that you can buy to coat your game. Now, please excuse me, because the nearest I get to online gaming is Solitaire and Snap. But when we're talking about these skins, they have iconic elements built into all of these different layers. So there are symbols. If you are a fan of Dior, you're going to see the 47, which was some part of the street. You're going to see some of the iconic symbols. You're going to see the logo just repeated in some of these ideas. It's one of the more interesting collaborations, and it really shows that consumers are going to find connections with brands in other ways and in other worlds. NFTs, Bitcoin, they'll come and go. And they probably aren't going to take off because the Chinese consumer of luxury doesn't get them. They just don't understand why you want to buy something for so much money that you can never actually own, wear, possess. And I'm right there with them, because I don't understand it either. But it's one of these things that people have gone through. Lots of luxury brands have run into NFTs, run into Bitcoins. But these sort of more imaginative, more immersive experience collaborations, these are things that are going to continue to happen. And luxury brands have got the money to be able to do it. And that's the key, that they have the funds, they can be more innovative. So if I bring this back round now to where I started with the local opportunity in luxury. You saw at the beginning that the market is growing. So Solange, can you just click us onto our last piece? Because Indian luxury is something which will grow. It's essential. And as the designers of the future, it's really up to you to make that happen. If you fail to use local crafts in the work that you're producing, then how can we expect them to grow and develop? What you're doing is you're actually leaving the door wide open for all the Western luxury brands that are circling like planes over Mumbai Airport, trying to land in India. And some of them are getting here. I saw the Tiffany store in Delhi just this week. They're coming down into Mumbai. You know, not everything is best from the West. And honestly, if you can take responsibility for that, you're the future. You are why Indian luxury is going to grow, or not. And if you take that on and you take that responsibility, then Indian luxury has got an amazing future happening for it. So But for generations, India has given luxury products to the world. We think it's time to actually build on India's own luxury brands and branding expertise. You need to build this, it's a skill, and that's where we fit in, and that's why we're very different. So, whatever you want for your future, and however you can be Indian in heart and global in spirit, that's what's going to make the difference to Indian luxury. If you want to create a new modern luxury brand, you have to consider a variety of factors, not just the ones I've shown you, but really understanding style, personality, and bringing that cultural relevance into it. And we often recommend that our students go into employment first for a couple of years to learn the craft, to understand the sector, before then starting up their own brand. Because you need to know how to interact with the consumer and learn what you can do that's a little bit different for them as well. And that's why we have our career development program, which within 10 weeks you're guaranteed a job interview with a premium or luxury brand. Because we want to know that we're helping people start careers in luxury. It's not only about building a brand, but it's actually getting involved in luxury right from the get-go. So, any questions? Any comments? Or is it 5 o'clock somewhere and we all want to go home?
You spoke about NFTs and how there is lots of luxury and fashion. Many luxury brands are dipping their toes into the metaverse. Do you think it's just a fad, or do you think it will stay on for a while?
There is a way that NFTs can be quite useful. And that can be by monitoring the origins and the journey of particular items, particularly high value. There are a lot of NFTs within the luxury car retail sector, for example, where you can monitor where that car has been and how it's evolved over its time. I do think that it's limited. So we've seen all these NFTs around art and pieces that you just can never own. And you can see that there's a problem because now some brands are having to say, well, you can buy the NFT, but also I'll give you a printout of it. People want stuff. They want to hold something. If you're going to pay that much, then you need to be able to feel it. You need to be able to display it, because it's also about expressing you. If everything's online, it's all hidden. Whereas actually, even though luxury is evolving, it's still about you feeling like you're reflecting yourself, your own values and personality. And you want to talk to other people about it. And it's really hard to talk to others about something they can't see. So I think it's evolving and it's not finished yet. Bitcoin's a whole new game. Don't get me going on that. Yeah?
Just one more question. Lots of very luxurious brands, they have smaller segments for the masses or a smaller segment for people like us too and who cannot afford it. Do you think it dilutes the brand image?
I think if it becomes too available, yes. Now you're always going to have haute couture. You go to the atelier of Chanel or Givenchy and you will buy the catwalk piece and they'll adapt it to you. Probably not that much because they're very skinny people. And you will be only one of one. And that's only ever going to be for you. And you'll be the first to wear it. When they start to get into ready-to-wear, then they have to be very careful not to dilute that brand too far. And this is where the danger is happening now, I think, with the mega houses, because you've got thousands of the same suit around the world. That's diluting it. Now, it doesn't take much for, if it was exactly the same as that haute couture piece that they're seeing everywhere else, a high net worth isn't going to like this. So we've got to think about the fact that they want to be elite. They are elite, they're very special. I was with somebody the other day who, she walks into Dior like it's walking into H&M for everyone else. Hi, I'm here, yeah, I'll have this, I'll have this. It is a bizarre life. Not a life I even want, actually. But it is perfectly normal for them to have these sort of levels. Now, would she have been happy if she'd seen a few other people in there in the cheap end? No, you can't do that. You have to almost corral them into somewhere that's hidden, because it's still about what is available only for a few. So it's a danger. And when Sabyasachi did his H&M, I went, oh, please, you look like a postman. Anyway.
I just
just wanted to add to the whole NFT bit. So if a brand does an NFT and they say that we give you not just the NFT but maybe a social kind of membership to our elite club, or like an opportunity to come be a part of something which is rare, which is not available to somebody, or with the NFT of say a Nike shoes, we give you the physical shoes, which is just a pair that is made for you and you are the only person who own it.
Yeah.
So that physicality does sort of come in. So it's not just about the whole, online ownership. Some people do attach the brand social value to it so that you become loyal to that brand in a kind of way. So personally, I feel like NFTs and metaverse can be converted into something that is very, it could be used in a very different way to become, like for customers to be loyal to the brand.
Yeah. And I think when you look at one of our luxuries, the luxury of belonging, that's exactly what you're talking about, the VIP club. The place where you can just associate with others who are like me. But you could have a super wealthy person, you could have somebody who's not that wealthy but bought into this. And so you have then a different layer that is not all just the same people, but they have the same passion. And that's that sense of belonging and being part of a tribe and learning and so on. So there is a physicality that I think is needed. And it really is something that's going to be driven by the creativity of the individuals who understand this very well and can actually see the value that's being added for the consumer. Because again, if it comes back to just being something that the brand is imposing because they think they can sell anything to them, that's not going to work. You have to look at it from a value add for the consumer.